I see you found our little hiding spot in the universe. Don't get too comfortable. This is a place where you will find those with an experience that's out of this world, or possibly deep within your life. I welcome you to the Oracles with James Tyson. Lean forward and listen. We will pull you into a supernatural journey with guests from around the world, each one experiencing some of the most extraordinary phenomena this wee planet has to offer. Now, here are the Oracles with James Tyson.
Why, thank you, Liam. And thank you, listener, for tuning in to today's episode of the Oracles with James Tyson. It's me, James. And today I want to introduce you to my friend, Dr. Rita Louise. She is the founder of the Institute of Applied Energetics and host of Just Energy Radio. Louise is a naturopathic physician and 20-year veteran of human potential field. Her unique gift as a medical intuitive and clairvoyant illuminates and enlivens her work. If you go over to Rita's website, soulhealer.com, you'll notice she does medical intuition evaluations. She's a medical intuitive counseling, psychic readings, clairvoyant readings, spiritual energy healing, and many additional services, including training. If you are ever interested in wanting to become, or if you think you have it in you to become a medical intuitive, if you are an intuitive to start with, she does that type of training. Rita is also the author of a number of books, but the book we want to talk about today is her newest, and it's The Dysfunctional Dance of the Empath and the Narcissist. It takes an in-depth look at the dynamics between the loving, compassionate, and often selfless empaths and those willing to take from them, those self-serving narcissists, and endeavors to uncover the unconscious patterns that keep them trapped in these cycles of abuse and toxic relationships. It's very, very interesting. We talk about the difference in the vibration levels between empaths and narcissists, why they're attracted to each other, and what causes these bizarre unconscious patterns that keep individuals trapped in cycles of abusive relationships. And I have to really focus on this, or not focus on it, but make a point of saying this, but it's an unconscious pattern. As the empath doesn't realize they're attracting a lower vibration person, and that lower vibration person doesn't know why they're attracted to the empath. They're not coming in there knowing that I am consciously going to steal this person's energy. I'm going to tap in and drain them. They have no idea. They just know that they feel really good when they're hanging out with this person and being with them and not letting them out of their sight and keeping within arm's length of them and controlling whatever they do because it makes them feel good. So it's not a conscious thing, but it's really good to get the heck out of that type of relationship. So we're going to be talking about that. Empaths versus narcissists. Rita, how are you today?
I'm doing great, James. Thanks for having me on your show.
Oh, thanks for coming on. It's very, very interesting that you have been writing about something that I have had a real interest in for quite a long time, and that is that whole dynamic between empaths and narcissists. But before we get into that, tell me a little bit about yourself. What got you into this whole line of research to start with?
Well, it wasn't on my radar at all. People that are familiar with my work, I'm a medical intuitive, psychic energy person, and I've written books on psychic abilities and energy medicine, and I have a book on ghosts, and I have a couple of books and a bunch of videos about ancient alien, ancient mystery type topics. And so writing about empaths and narcissists was just not what I was planning. But a number of life events transpired where I came to recognize that I have experienced a history of becoming involved with narcissists and trying to live happily ever after. And it was kind of like, the universe ripped this giant Band-Aid off my third eye, and I could just see at this point in time this pattern that had existed in my life, starting with my family of origin and continuing until that day. And other than being shocked and devastated, and it really, got to my soul, because it was like, I didn't know. I sat there and it's like, as intuitive as you are, it's like, I didn't even know. I didn't even realize it. And so, I started working on my healing journey. And one of the things that I joke around, it's like, I just do whatever spirit tells me to do. Okay, spirit tells me to do stuff. I argue for a while, and then I ultimately just do it. And, so as I was starting on my healing journey, they basically told me I needed to write a book about it. So, my investigation into things turned into this book.
It's fascinating, and if anybody is interested in finding it, just go to Dr. Rita's website, soulhealer.com, click on shop, go to books, and you'll see it, The Dysfunctional Dance of the Empath and the Narcissist, and you can get it there. And if you get it on the website, you get it autographed too, which is very cool.
No, it's priceless.
And it's priceless, yes.
It's priceless.
It's priceless. That doesn't mean it's free. Quit that. The actual feelings of the understanding of you becoming an empath, or you being an empath, when did that hit you? Whereabouts were you in your life when that light came on?
So when I was like 12 or 13, there were TV shows like The Amazing Kreskin, and there was a series who was a mentalist and he had ESP. And there was a series called The Sixth Sense, which featured Gary Collins, and he was a professor of parapsychology, and he had ESP. And he would like go into a room and pick up a piece of paper, and the embodied image of the dead person would float around and give him a clue as to who killed them. I became fascinated with the concept of, in that day, it was ESP. It wasn't psychic stuff. It was ESP. And really kind of changed my focus, because I was a weird kid, from archaeology and anthropology to psychic stuff. And so I started reading books on, personal development and, Ram Dass and pretty much anything that I could find. Because one of the things that I understood was that if you became enlightened, and I'm putting that in quotes, that you got psychic abilities as kind of a byproduct. And I waited and waited and read and studied and studied and read and read and read. And then finally, many, 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 many years later, I found the Berkeley Psychic Institute and studied with them. Oh. And after being in their program for about 3 weeks, I came to understand that I had been very psychic my whole life, very empathic my whole life, but no one ever connected the dots.
Do you get in hindsight, do you find this came from like your mother's side of the family, your father's side, or both?
I'm going to say my mother's side of the family. Not that she owned it, but I'll say she busted me a number of times doing things, although she didn't bust me, but she would like make a comment or like write me a letter and go like blah, 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 blah about somebody in the family. I hope that doesn't happen to you. And like, it just happened to me, and it's just like, quit it, Mom. Quit it.
Yeah. The reason I ask is I've in the last few years and looking into it myself, I'm finding for a Caucasian person who is an empath or a higher vibration empath, their background is going to be of Welsh, Irish, Scottish, Scandinavian with a dip into Germany, or along the inside of the boot of Italy, coast of France, coast of Spain, Portugal, and a bit in the Balkans, where those are basically all gypsy backgrounds. If you went back 200 or 300 years, we were still living with the earth and not off of the earth. Now, if you threw American Indian in there, Indo-Indian, like real Indians from India, Aboriginal, any Aboriginal background, it just amplifies that. African, it'll amplify that because, again, going back only a few hundred years, you lived with the earth, where various elemental beings were still
alive and kicking
day-to-day life. And I also find, well, and this is a statistic that this is literally from about 2014, and I used to know where I got the statistic from, but 68% of empaths are women. So that's what I was kind of thinking, it makes sense. It kind of follows the woman side of your background, or your mother's side.
But, I think that men are empathic, except they're empathic in a different way, and they're less likely to own it.
Oh, okay. When you say a different way, what would be different?
And I kind of put, empathic into the whole like psychic ability thing, but they might receive that information more on a knowingness level, where they just know it versus, or on a visual level. They tend to carry their energy higher up, where women bring it further down into their body. So they bring it more into their second and fourth chakra. But I think it's not that men don't have it. I think that they distance themselves from it because they're not supposed to.
Okay. That's it. I'm just making notes here. And of course, forgetting how to spell chakra. I find that a lot of the men that I run into that are higher vibration are sparkly. It's not focused.
I love that word.
Yeah, you look at them and it's like sparkles and like fireworks. And I met a few women like that too, until you kind of pointed out to them or described to them what an empath was, and kind of look at them and tell them what their life was like, and they're staring at you, go, how do you know that? Are you psychic? And I go, yeah, kind of, but this is not about psychic. This is like a generic empath thing. And then when they start looking into it themselves, a little bit of meditation, a little bit of reading, a little bit of relaxation about that part of them. When I see them again, it's focused. It's a focused energy.
Mm-hmm. But, again, I mean, to me, one of the things, whether you're talking about psychic ability, whether you're talking about being an empath, whether you're talking about, I know a topic we're going to get into is abuse and dealing with, healing from, recovering from trauma, is about awareness. And so if there is an awareness about what's going on, I mean, I read all of these books. I mean, you don't know how many books I read waiting for something to happen, because that's how it was depicted on TV, that something would happen. You would see some ghost walk across a room, or I don't even know, the sky would open up and, like angels would come through with trumpets and be like, doo, 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 Rita, here's this information. But it isn't like that, and we're not trained to experience what's going on the inside. We're only taught to experience what's going on in the world around us. And so we're looking out there, but on the inside, our experience might be 100% different than somebody else's, And so I think once we start to acknowledge our inner world, the game changes. A lot changes, because we become more in touch with ourselves, more authentic to ourselves, more in tune with ourselves, more loving to ourselves.
Yes. Yeah, I found that it's almost turning inside and looking more into our past and our being and who we are as people, as opposed to constantly pushing everything out and trying to affect other people. When we turn inside, our effect on other people is still there, but we're not running. It's almost like you're running an ego the other way. hey, look at me. Now, when you turn inside and really start thinking about who you are and where this energy, this vibration comes from, and why you think the way you think, and why you react the way you react, when you start focusing on that, it gets a lot brighter. Does that make sense? That it starts to really glow. And then the byproduct of that is a positive effect on others.
Right. I mean, because I feel like it gives you a choice of how you're going to use your energy or how you're going to act or react to what's going on. When I was growing up, and I'm going to keep talking about this internal world thing. When I was growing up, I mean, my family was, I have one sister that we, always go, but our family puts the fun in dysfunctional. And when I went to Berkeley Psychic Institute, one of the things that they had was raging trans medium. Oh my God, was I one of them? Because I picked up all of the energy that was going on in the house. So if there was tension going on, if there was, my parents were fighting, which they didn't really do, but there was just a lot of tension. If we would have company, oh my God, because now my parents are like totally freaking uptight and like they want you on your best behavior, but they are just uptight. And there's me. Here, I'm just going to soak all this tension up, and now I'm overloaded and I am wound up tighter than a drum because I've just taken on all of their tension. And then what happens? I overreact to something really stupid because I now need to discharge this energy that I've just taken up. And so now, because I'm aware of what's going on, I can go, wow, there's a lot of tension going on here. Maybe I need to go outside, or as an adult, maybe I better leave. Maybe I need to take this in moderate doses, and change the situation. But I'm aware that I'm getting overloaded, or I'm taking on too much energy. Where before it was just like, it just was. Yeah. And there was no understanding of the cause and effect situation.
When did that kind of the understanding come through, or was it many years later?
It was, I put a lot on, studying at the Berkeley Psychic Institute, because they really were very good at providing vocabulary for, that internal experience, and, so there's the vocabulary, and then they're separating out, this is me, and this is all of the crap that I picked up from everybody else, or from the situation, and it makes it be a little easier to navigate, sometimes not so much. I always joke around and I give Walmart a really bad time. But I have a hard time navigating Walmart. And I think people that are empathic, have a hard time with like Walmart, or if you go to like a concert, or, like I used to work whole life expos, and I had to stay in my booth. I wouldn't even get anything to eat because there was too much energy out there. And I just couldn't go in it. And so it gives you opportunities to navigate it in different ways, but I'll go into a Walmart, and if I just have a mental list of what I need to get, and especially if I have to go from healthcare back to computer, and then you forget something, you got to go back to healthcare, and now you're over in food, and you do that. And then I start wandering because I can't remember anything because I'm getting overloaded, and then I can't get out of that store fast enough,
Oh, yeah. And that is one of the common things. When we talk about empaths, we talk about crowd reaction, being in a like you and I go to a concert and we both like the band. We're 3 feet off the ground. We are floating because everyone in the auditorium is in a positive state. and it's really, really good. But when you walk out the door, if you were to see a fight and then go home and someone says, so how was the concert? Oh, it was kind of weird. Well, that fight was like 30 seconds, but the concert itself was great. But you come away with the energy that you picked up from the confrontation and the ripple effect, that pebble in a pond ripple effect that happens when there is a confrontation in a crowd that pushes out. And God help you if you ever got into a riot situation, the vibration there. And I would pick them up in classrooms. And in hindsight, and this is what we're talking about, the manifestation that I had, well, my empathic connection to the energy in a classroom manifested into a class clown kind of pushback, where other friends of mine, again in hindsight, who were very empathic, they were more focused and quiet and grounding, but very artistic. So they took it and they withdrew, where my pushback was kind of loud and in your face. But was I confident? No, I was completely insecure. But because I didn't know what was going on, I didn't understand the feeling. But I could, as a policeman too. This was even before that. I could stand on the street corner and watch a crowd of people walking down the street, and one person may stick out completely different from everybody else on that street as they're flowing. It's like a creek, and there's a stick now sticking up out of the creek. And I would focus on that person because that person's energy is completely different from everyone else's. Well, that person ended up, was a drug dealer, or in some cases, the undercover policeman looking at the drug dealer on the other side of the street. I could pick them out by just looking at them, and I had no idea why I could see them and other people couldn't. They just didn't fit. Or you go to a nightclub and everyone was dancing, and there'd be a guy on the left and a guy on the right of the dance floor, and you'd look at them and think, okay, these guys are going to fight. And sure enough, 10, 15, 20 minutes, an hour later, they were in a scrap because their energy was completely different from the flow of everyone else in the club. And I could see that, and I could, going to crime scenes and things, or going to scraps, I could jump out of a car and run up and grab the bad guy without talking to anyone on who the bad guy was. And some of the guys I worked with said, how did you know it was him? I said, well, you couldn't tell? It was like, you see them completely differently. They stick out. And it's fascinating when I talk to somebody else, when I talk to somebody like you who's actually taken time and sat back and processed the reasoning behind this. It's actually, to me, like I say, it's a fascinating thing. And we're talking to Dr. Rita Louise. And please go to her website, Soul Healing. Soul Healer. .com, soulhealer.com. If you go to Soul Healing, she won't be there.
I won't be there, but you might be able to get a really cool CD or something, because I think that's a band.
Oh, cool! Yeah, it's the type of things that you've researched is right up my alley. It's fascinating to hear your take on all this stuff, and the whole narcissist thing too. It just drives me crazy. It's something I'm going to run by you, and I want to get into the neglect and abuse. But from traveling around, and last year was a incredible travel year for me. I was gone for about I think 6 months. I was off doing something in some part of the U.S. and talking to people. And one of the things that I came away with, which is very, very interesting, and we'll see if this kind of matches up. And this is my kind of theory thing based on the people I talk to, but you get a lot of very high vibration kids, and most of the ones I was talking to were, if not all of them, were women. But they, as pre-puberty and a couple of post-puberty, were sexually abused. And the way it was described to me, it was like you've got a very, very low vibration male. and sometimes female, very low vibration, attracted to the extreme high vibration of this other being. And they have no idea why they're attracted. They just feel really good when they're with this person or close to the person or even thinking of the person. They feel really good. And this is me thinking now that what these lower vibration people are doing is taking that feeling and reverting it to their base primal, the reason I feel this way, it must be sexual. When it's not, but that is how it manifests to them as being sexual. And then the abuse happens, and our poor little empath or high vibration kid is broken, and the lower vibration person moves on, and probably completely mixed up too, because they're not understanding it either. In your research, is this type of thing, have you ever kind of connected those two things?
Investigating sexual abuse has not been one of the areas that I've looked at because I just don't think I can deal with it emotionally. Yeah. So I'll just preface it with that.
Yep.
One of the things that I believe is that individuals so I believe that individuals can come onto the planet being very sensitive. And I'm using that word very specifically. They can come in and they're more sensitive than other people. Their channels might be more open. They might be more grounded. You know what I mean? And they just come in with more light. My feeling is, however, is that these same individuals because they're so sensitive, experience, and I'm going to put this in quotations, more trauma. Somebody says something off color and they take it more personal. They feel a shift in the energy and they don't know what to do with it. And so there's a lot more internal processing that happens, and then you add in a dysfunctional family or bullying at school or whatever it is, issues of worthiness and being worthy are add to this whole thing. And I think that these individuals, that what they're experiencing opens them up even more. So they might already be bright shining, but then they experience the trauma, and that makes it's kind of like an early warning system, where they're using their cat whiskers to identify when it's safe and when it's not.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And then depending on what's going on, it can just become more, and so in the case that you're talking about, I think people that inherently have low vibration, that's kind of one of the definitions of a narcissist, is that they can't create their own energy. They're the ultimate energy vampires, and depending on how much you need to take from others energetically will put you down that spectrum even more. And so people that are predators, they need to get the energy from someone else. They need to get the attention from someone else because they're not able to produce it themselves.
Yeah, agreed. I find that when I do run into people of a very low vibration, I can almost split them into two groups. They're either broken and almost just within themselves. And then there's the other ones that are more of an extroverted predator. And predator, I don't mean it by, well, actually I do, I guess.
Yeah, you do.
The base thing is predator, that they're constantly looking to connect and to sap other people's energy. And God bless them, they have no idea. It's not a conscious thing. It's completely subconscious. They look at somebody and go, man, I'm attracted to that person, or I need to hang out with that person, or I need to be there. I need to be around this person. They have no idea consciously that I need that because I need to go draw energy from them. They just know that they feel good. Mm-hmm. And they keep doing it until they completely drain the other person. And I found too in talking to people is that you will have a conversation with somebody about their relationship, and sure enough, she pushes the narcissist out of her relationship, and there's about a 90-day turnaround, and about 90 days, that 3-month turnaround where they phone back saying, so how you doing? Are you seeing anybody? I'd really like to get back with you, kind of thing. Well, what they're subconsciously, they're saying, hi, how you doing? I haven't found anybody with your vibration that I can drain as well as you. Do you mind if I come back for another feeding? And it's a literal 90-day turnaround. And
well, actually, if you do energy work on the person and pull cords and help ground their space and help move the other person out of their space, it's 3 days, if that.
Oh.
I mean, because I do a lot of energy work on people that are going through this situation. They've just ended a relationship, they're really upset. And I will work on clearing that other person's energy out of their space, kind of first steps so that you can be you. The goal is for you to be you in your space. But if you're with a narcissist, they have basically moved into your energy space, And so, one of the first steps to me is to start packing the bags and moving them out, which includes removing cords. And in my experience, 3 days, if that. And it's a joke. And it's a joke because I tell them it's kind of like, okay, so I pulled all these cords and I did all this work. So within 3 days, you're going to get the call, email, text, smiley face on Facebook, whatever it is. And they just look at me. I go, I'm telling you, it's a fact. I always get calls. Yeah. It was 20 minutes later. I mean, I swear to God. It's much rarer that there isn't some kind of reach out for contact. Again, text, email, phone call, something, that they try to re-engage and reconnect and record you.
Now, when you say cut the cords, how do you do that?
Okay, so I don't cut cords. There are a lot of people that cut cords and they, imagine, like there's these threads or whatever going from you to the other person. And then they physically or in their mind's eye will take a scissor and go snip, snip, snip. I don't like that imagery. When you're doing energy work, it's all about, to me, when I do it, it's about imagery and intention. Imagery and intention. And to me, cutting is a painful act, because there's this thing that's going into me and now I just cut it, Plus, it leaves a piece of their funky, narcissistic energy in you. I'm much more of a let's pull it out by the roots because we have a better chance of getting rid of it and not leaving any, remnant of them in my space for them to reconnect to. And so when I'm working with cords, I literally will imagine that I can wrap them around my hand and I pull them out because there is a perceptive little boop, that you can feel that the end of this string has come out from the person's body.
Okay.
I find, because if you're cutting the cords, I mean, I'm experiencing the kind of harsh cut, but they're also experiencing it too, and I think that many narcissists are also very sensitive. One of the things I talk about in the book is they're only just sensitive to their own feelings, not anybody else's, which makes it be narcissistic. So they can do whatever they want to you, but if you do it to them, now their feelings are hurt.
Yeah, and they can react in one of two ways, get all pouty or react violently.
So...
Yeah, and that's the hard part. You in your book, this and talking about breaking the cycle of the destructive and negative relationships, you talk about cycles of abuse, and then and as children get trapped into the cycle and more likely to be then abused as adults. Can you kind of amplify that a little bit? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So as we grow up, we're born, we interact with the family, and starting as soon as we exit the womb, some speculate earlier than that, a series of programming. We are programmed. If you do this, you get congratulated. If you do this, you get in trouble. And it starts from day one. And children are enculturated into a certain kind of behavior. So if you have parents that are loving and supportive, then the chance of the child growing up to feel safe in the world and feel valued and loved and worthwhile is good. But from what I'm seeing from people, that is not the major situation that we find. And so when you experience dysfunction in your family, it's like you're being trained in, this is what love means. This is what it is to be safe. But being safe might mean I curled up in bed. I ran away. That's the safe place. But it's not really from a big picture place, a safe place. And so we learn all of these not ideal ways of acting or reacting, but we also don't necessarily learn what healthy is. And narcissists deal with the same kind of thing, that there is some trauma or that happens in their life, or it's their way of reacting to life. And let me just throw this piece in. My belief is that people that are empaths are able to better recover from the trauma, and the trauma could be as much as my parents didn't buy me that red bike that I wanted when I was 6 years old. Okay, to, sexual abuse or physical abuse, but anything that undermines our inner autonomy, can manifest as trauma in an adult, so empaths are better able to, and I'm going to say shake it off. They're better able to ground their body. They're better able to reconnect to source and God's love and be in alignment with themselves, and at least on some levels experience wholeness within themselves. Might not be great, but it's something. And they're always left with hope. Well, if I do this, then maybe they'll love me. If I do this, then maybe things will be better. If I make my parents breakfast every Sunday morning, maybe, we'll have a good day and it won't be uncomfortable. Whatever it is, it's like there's this hope that sits out there that keeps you moving forward. Now, in some aspects, that hope, if you're an adult and in a dysfunctional relationship or a toxic relationship, it can make it so that you keep going back for more, because the narcissist will dangle that carrot out there and go, oh no, I'll go to counseling or it'll be better. And the hope you have can keep you going back for more. Pretty dysfunctional. Yeah. The narcissist, on the other hand, loses hope. They experience the trauma and they just stop growing, and they just take all of it and internalize what's going on. And so someone, if they're really narcissistic, it's like they don't want to look at their own stuff. They don't want to take responsibility. And God forbid they look inside, because there's not just look inside for what happened 10 minutes ago. There's look inside because there's the anxiety closet stacked up with boxes of crap that they've never looked to heal, never tried to resolve, and whether you're an overt narcissist or a covert narcissist, which are the quiet, mealy ones, they there's just really a scared, boy or girl on the inside that is just looking to hide what they're really experiencing.
And they're kind of trapped in that. They can't, once you are that being, you can't get out of that, can you?
Well, I mean, I think first and foremost, it's like they have to admit that there was something wrong, and it never is anything wrong with them. It's always everybody else's fault. I was talking to a friend of mine, and they were talking about, the neighbor had a dog, and the dog attacked, bit somebody that was walking down the sidewalk. So it wasn't their fault for not having the dog on a leash. It was the other person's fault for walking down the sidewalk. I mean, that's the narcissistic mentality. I didn't have to do my part in the whole thing. You shouldn't have been there. And so it's just this whole skewed viewpoint of the world.
Yeah, it is an odd way when you speak to them. And going back to falling back into my old job as a policeman and talking to. And it doesn't mean the bad guys I talked to were all narcissists, because a bunch of the police I worked with were narcissists. When you're talking to them, it's almost like I'm talking to them, and one eyebrow is raising, going, "What did you just say?" Or how? What is your understanding? And it's like they weren't connected. Mm-hmm. They had a different view on things from me, and we'd all, and again, in my area of expertise where I worked, most of us were empaths in my job. But unfortunately, we'd have these narcissistic, some of them supervisors would come in, and we'd all kind of just nod and look at them. And when they left, we'd look at each other and go, "What?" It was oil and water. They just didn't make any sense. Mm-hmm. And it was their energy that would come into a room, and it would just, we'd all just leave, and felt tired after they left. But it's wondering if they could actually even change. Or once you're a narcissist, I don't know if you can meditate and focus.
I mean, from what I understand,
but I don't know if they can.
I mean, from what I understand, with depending on how severe it is, they can, but it's not necessarily an easy road, because, it really is changing belief systems, and trying to teach them that how to step in someone else's shoes, or how to have concern and passion for somebody else, because the whole world is evaluated by how they filter information, and so if this is going on with you, it's like, well, it wouldn't bother me, so it shouldn't bother you.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, it does. Well, it doesn't matter, because it doesn't bother me, so it shouldn't bother you. So get over it. It's like, okay.
When you're out, like we as empaths are out there doing our stuff, you find that we're not all perfect, obviously, but the ones that are less than perfect really seem to are controlled by ego more than just the empathic heart. And sometimes they come across as narcissistic. You find that? I guess
so are you saying people that are empathic?
Some higher vibration people who are out there, they're still ego focused, and they really come across as being narcissistic.
Well, I'm going to make a kind of blunt comment about that.
Excellent.
The question, I'm good at that. The question would be, are they really a spiritual person?
Okay, yeah.
You know what I mean? Because I can talk spiritual, and I can talk spiritual, but if you're not acting spiritual, are you really a spiritual person?
Yeah.
And it comes down, and that's one of the things about narcissists. It's like their actions never match their words. Never. So if they're saying, oh, look at me, I'm spiritual, look, I have all of these followers, and then they sit there and like run out, from paying at a dinner or don't leave a tip. It's like, well, how freaking spiritual is that?
Yeah. Or even just being nice to another person.
Mm-hmm. I mean, there are some people in I'll say the metaphysical community that are not nice at all. And it's kind of like, I thought you're like spiritual. How can you be spiritual and not be nice? I mean, there's boundaries. I get boundaries, but then there's just basic kindness.
Yeah. Yeah. And I see them a lot more at the bigger conferences, a lot of the UFO conferences.
Let's just not get into those UFO people.
Yeah. A very, very, very interesting group sometimes where you'd be talking to somebody and they just walk away from you and you're thinking, okay, that's interesting. But I guess they're here to sell books. And that's what they do. We are talking to Dr. Rita Louise about her new book, The Dysfunctional Dance of the Empath and the Narcissist. You can find that on her website, soulhealer.com, as well as anywhere books are sold. But you're not going to get it autographed unless you go to the website, soulhealer.com, and click on the whole PayPal thing, and off you go. One of the things you cover in your book are the patterns, the unconscious patterns that keep the individuals trapped in these cycles of abusive, narcissistic relationships. What are some of these unconscious patterns that you find that they're trapped in?
Well, and we've kind of touched on that. It is the not recognizing that what's going on is abusive, or what's going on is dysfunctional, or how the person is treating you is not healthy. Sometimes, especially people that are empaths. Okay, so you have an empath, but they're a healthy empath, and they have good boundaries, and they have a good sense of self and good sense of self-esteem, which you really have to work to get to that place, okay? For most people. I don't really know any that have gotten there without being on some kind of a spiritual quest and spiritual journey to just be. They just are, and they allow people to have their karma, and they are able to choose, do I want to help this person, or do I want to invest all of my energy into healing or fixing them? So for an empath, that's a little rare for that to just come about naturally. Most of them have some kind of wounding, and they will meet up with someone, and a lot of times there's a lot of self-worth issues. And the ones that get stuck in the patterns, they're really repeated patterns, have some self-worth issues, and they're just happy that somebody likes them. And the narcissist is like, oh, I love you, and we're soulmates, and, we should get married. Like you went on 2 dates, but there's this level of intensity that they bring to the table that the empath, who's looking for love, looking for acknowledgement, looking for somebody to see them on the inside, to heal their pain, the narcissist is like all about it, because they're giving them the attention in the way that they need to receive it. Little does the empath know that everything they're saying is just a bunch of crap. I mean, they might feel it in the moment, but they're not being true to themselves. And they're feeding, the narcissist is feeding off because, okay, so the narcissist is like, oh, you're so beautiful. And now that makes the empath light up, and they're more shiny, and they're giving the narcissist more, energy, so it kind of creates this little love boat dynamic vacuum. And then time happens, and maybe the empath isn't feeling real well, and they're in bed with the flu. Well, now they're not kissing the narcissist's butt anymore, or they have to work a bunch of overtime at work, or they have kids and the kids are sick and they're, and they're having to take care of themselves and take care of life. And that's when you start seeing the narcissist starting to break down and the mask he's wearing starts to crack. And their true feelings, or their responding feelings start to change. And, maybe they don't like you so much, or they give you the silent treatment, or they start and have strange and unusual behavior because they're not getting the same kind of attention they got from you in the past at this point in time.
Yeah.
But the empath, it's like they tend to be very loyal. They're givers. The narcissist is like, well, screw you. I'm not going to give you anymore. And so the empath is like filling in the gap, because they don't like when the energy feels off. If you're angry and upset, it's like my inside is going, what can I do to fix this? I can't deal with your upset. So I need to do things so that I'm not upset too, and I'm not feeling this discord inside of myself. So then they go and they try to take care of whatever the narcissist needs, and and so they just find themselves getting sucked in deeper and deeper and deeper, until they get to the point where they can't do it anymore. That might be 6 months, it might be 2 years, it might be 5 years. But I have met a bunch of people where it's 25 and 30 years before they can sit there and say, I can't do this anymore.
Oh, yeah. And a lot of times this has to be pointed out by somebody from the outside. Mm-hmm. Like, because again, it's a cycle. They get caught in this, and bless them, their mother or their father may have been in the same cycle. Mm-hmm. So they just think this is what a relationship is based on what they saw growing up and all the challenges they had in their life growing up. And now this is the person I'm with. Therefore, this is how it's supposed to be. But it's not.
But I think the biggest takeaway that I would like to offer to empaths is, it takes two to tango. And you got into the relationship for some reason. And you didn't leave the relationship for some reason, and you can't give it all to them. They might have been weird. They got their thing going on, and I'm not minimizing that. But you engaged, you stayed engaged. And that's part of the healing, because once you start fixing your internal crap, then you can break free of the cycle. And I've said that to people, and then they're had this one woman go, "You're just a narcissist," and it's like, no, I'm not. No. Not even close. It's like, but you have to take ownership of your part in what happens, so whether you have self-worth issues, whether you have boundary issues, whatever that is, you need to start working on yourself so that you can be whole, you can be solid, you can be authentic to yourself. It's like, okay, you did this and I'm hurting. This behavior is hurting me. Not, oh, well, I'm just, well, he had a bad day at work, so now I'm just going to ignore my pain and my discomfort. Or a situation happens and I'm pissed off for a week, but I feel better and now I'm re-engaging in a relationship, but there's not any conversation, there's not any resolution, there's not anything changing. And so if you keep re-engaging in something that's not healthy, then it's never going to get better. Yeah. And it'll go from one relationship to the next relationship.
Yeah, because you don't understand that you need to change yourself.
Correct.
Because you're just assuming, well, this is what all relationships are. Mm-hmm. And because that's the cycle you've got into.
Well, and it was suggested to me that sometimes when we get into a relationship, we train our partners in how to treat us, which is true. We do train our partners in how to treat us. But if you are unwilling or unable to, or don't have boundaries. Okay, so if you don't have boundaries, it's like your partner can have bad behavior and you just don't say anything about it. And so then the next time they have bad behavior, you don't say anything about it. And what you're teaching them is that they can have bad behavior and there's not any kind of repercussion on you, and they can have worse and worse behavior and you're still not going to do anything, and you're just going to be enculturated into they have bad behavior and I just need to accept it.
Oh, those narcissists.
Gotta love them.
Yeah, we do sometimes. But again, it's something more subconscious. Is I can fix you, and they look at you and go, oh, she can fix me, and then off they go. But if you understand what that love at first sight, that connection is, that immediate connection, and you kind of have to step back and go, okay, what is it I'm seeing now? And it's taken me a million years in my life to figure that out. When I look at somebody and just go, oh my God, isn't that the nicest human being I've ever, oh, she's beautiful. And I want to be with her for the rest. Okay, what's going on in my head here and why? And then I have to take a deep breath and look at them again. And literally their face changes. Mm-hmm. Where years ago, it would be 2 or 3 days or a week into the relationship and sometimes longer, and I look at them and, oh my God, you've got a completely different face shape. And for the listener, when I talk about change, like it's a physical thing. It's not the same person. It is a physical different face, because the person I was looking at originally with my, I can fix you eyes, their face was like that blurred lens on the old movies, that fuzziness, that thing. And then it goes away and you see this person and they're not the same person. And they're like connected. And you talk about cords connection. It's crazy. And those people were in my life for sometimes months, sometimes weeks, sometimes not ever more than 2 years. And then it was like snapped. And off I went on a different angle. But it was the weirdest thing, again, in hindsight. And this is my experience in Narcissist versus Empath is only based on hindsight and those conversations I've had with other people who've had similar events, similar contact and similar relationships growing up. So it's really, this is fresh for me in looking at what you've written. Again, in the dysfunctional dance of the empath and the narcissist, it's kind of an eye-opener and a refreshing that other people see things kind of like I've seen them, and you have some explanation for it. Because
and it's interesting. So I'm in a relationship with a great guy who's not a narcissist, although my brain, he'll do something and I'll be like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. But he's not. Because your
spidey senses are always looking for them. That's why.
Yeah, well, at this point, yeah. But he's a self-admitted people pleaser, so there'll be something going on with me because, he'll do something and now I'm running around going, oh my God. And then he'll be like trying to fix me. He's like, well, I'm trying to understand. And he keeps going, well, but you don't, I'm a fixer. I fix things. It's like, but I don't want you to fix me. I don't need you to fix me. I just need you to be there. And so he's learning, we're both learning how to not, because he doesn't need me to fix him either. He's very self-contained. And, so we're both learning because of each other how to allow them to have their space, have their emotions, have whatever. And if you need me, I'm here. But if you don't need me, I'm not going to get in your face about it.
Yeah.
So it's just a really interesting dynamic, but I think it kind of drives him crazy.
He's still there.
But I'll tell you what, in a good way, but I'll tell you what, it's like if you're an empath, and you do work on yourself, or honor yourself, it's like there's the possibility that you can meet someone else that's an empath, and that kind of relationship is freaking awesome, where you got each other's back and you're supporting each other's dreams, and you're not doing 80% of the work and they're doing 10 because they're too busy playing text twists all day long. Mm-hmm. Not a true story. Can you tell by my voice?
Yeah. I was the empath, an empath couple, are the ones that sit in the living room not talking but communicating. Mm-hmm. Like they're like the old couple on, was it Up? The little cartoon, that guy, just sitting there, living their life and not communicating at all. And because there are more, in my experience, more female, and plus that weird statistic that floats out there that 68% of empaths are women, that you're always going to have the quote unquote fixer-upper partner. So you try to get one close to you. And here's a number of things that I've come up with in the last little while in regards to empaths, and I want to run them by you and get your opinion on them, because this is very nice to talk to somebody who knows about that. Okay. Is that I find that, and this is going again, Royal Canadian Mounted Police, or RCMP, and Canadian military. Those people who suffer from post-traumatic stress go to an operational injury clinic put on by the government, and it treats people with PTSD. And what I found in talking to those people is that I haven't found anybody with post-traumatic stress syndrome that isn't an empath.
That makes sense to me.
And 90% of those people, if not more, it's not what you saw during your whatever it was that created the post-traumatic stress. It's not what you saw, what you did, but how management treated you afterwards. So it was like, I work really hard and try to make everybody, I want to show them that I'm doing a good job, and look what I did. And the manager goes, no, you're an idiot. Stop that. Or, you know what? I need some time off because I was pretty affected by that accident or that event. Oh, no, man up and get back to work. And that is what triggers it. And your triggers are based on management and paperwork and things like that. It was very, very weird. But I found that PTSD victims were all empaths, higher vibration people. Mm-hmm. And the other one was I had a looking, and this is kind of going back into my line of work, is I used to run a robbery unit and then a prolific offender unit, where you're dealing with people who, like, bank robbery nowadays is a symptom of a medical condition called drug addiction. And you would catch the bank robber, and I had a very non-empath young guy working for me who was yelling and screaming at the fellow who robbed the local store with a serrated knife. And I was watching, like, these interviews are recorded video, and I was in the room looking at the monitor, watching him yell and scream at the heroin addict who robbed the store, who just sat there all kind of arms crossed, legs crossed, not looking at the ground kind of thing, just staring. And I came in and said, okay, I called the guy out and I said, look, I'll go talk to him. And I walked in and I sat down beside the guy and I said, hi, my name's James. I'll be your policeman today. How long have you been using heroin? Within 10 or 15 minutes, he was in tears. In 20 minutes, he was writing an apology letter to a bank teller of a bank he robbed. He had not admitted to robbing the bank yet. He just started writing the letter. What happened was looking at the video, you could see an energy change in him when I sat beside him. He was at such a low vibration point in his life. As soon as I came in, it brought him up, and all he wanted to do was tell me everything about his life. And then he admitted to like 6 bank robberies and 3 or 4 stores. So when I wrote the court document, it was all based on recovery. And he didn't do any time in jail that day. I let him out. I called his brother, who he hadn't seen in 9 years, because he was afraid to talk to him, his younger brother, who was a longshoreman. I said, hey, look, I caught your older brother here for all these crimes. I don't want to hold him in jail. Do you mind coming and picking him up until he goes to jail? He goes, oh, no, that would be great. And so when he got to court, his lawyer and the Crown prosecutor looked at it and said, "Oh, this is all recovery based." And I said, "Yeah, we don't have to. These are all the things he's admitted to, but you don't really have to charge him if you don't want to. I don't. It's no good for him to go to jail for years. He just needs to get his shit together." And hindsight again is that lower vibration person at the time was actually an empath. He was a higher vibration person. Now, if you look at my clients, my junkie clients, the reason they were on an opiate was physical, sexual, emotional abuse as a child. So yes, you can detox them, but unless you address one of those,
what's going on
causes,
the inside part,
he's gonna come back again. Plus, there are the ones out there that some idiot doctor badly prescribed them, and they got addicted because of an injury. But most of the ones I dealt with were victims of sexual, emotional, or physical abuse as a child, and they were higher vibration people. It's just that, we can get into this whole elemental beings and monkey on your back thing, but these people were being held. They're being held by something in a lower vibration. But when I was around them, and a couple of the other guys that I worked with, there was 17 of us at one point on the prolific offender unit. All of probably 15 were empaths. When you looked at them talking to one of the clients who was a drug addicted, you could see the client rise. Their energy got better. They got chatty. They were very protective over us, as we were very protective over them. And it was in trying to get everybody, basically, it's a different process up in Canada here than it is obviously with you guys, because it's not against the law to be a junkie in Canada. It's just against the law to possess drugs or sell them. But you don't crap on the drug abuser because of all the problems they had growing up, and this is what led them to the addiction, because they didn't grow up one day and go, I'm going to be a junkie. That's not what you do. So we address that.
But can I just make a comment on that?
Yeah.
I feel like in those situations, it's like you go in there and you're saying hello to their soul. You're saying hello to them, that person on the inside that they can't let out, that they are covering up or hiding or whatever, that is longing for connection, just longing for connection.
Yeah. And that's that example I gave you where the fella called his brother. He was afraid to call his younger brother for 9 years because he didn't want to admit that he had a drug problem, and he felt bad. But when I called him, he gave me permission to call his brother. The brother was happy. And of course, my client didn't know his brother would be happy. He just thought he was, my younger brother's going to write me off because I'm just an old heroin addict. Well, no, it's still your brother. You just have to talk to him. So life goes on, and but to see it, again, this is me in hindsight, going back, because that was around 2010, and this whole thing didn't come to me until 2012, but like the quote-unquote awakening side of things. So looking back, it was amazing. So a lot of my, again, getting back to running this by you, is a lot of my what you perceive as lower vibration people were actually recessed as a result of drug abuse or something that got them into that. And
but they might be using the drugs or the alcohol or whatever to cover over the memory and the feelings, because it's like,
oh, that's what it is. Yeah.
And they're using it as a coping mechanism versus doing what would be getting rid of it in a more healthy way.
Yeah, and they got to the point, especially with an opiate, fentanyl and heroin, you use it to numb the pain and the memory, but eventually you only use it because you don't want to get dope sick anymore. You don't really get high anymore. You just, if I don't use it, I'm going to get sick. And it's a horrible, horrible sick. Dope sick is incredibly bad, but that's the cycle of the drug use they get into. And it's not like it doesn't deaden the pain for more than a few seconds or maybe a couple of minutes. Not like it did when you first started. It was just, it keeps me from getting sick. And I don't ever want to be sick again, so I'm going to go to the bank and pass them a note, and they're going to give me some money, and I'm going to buy some drugs, and eventually I'll die. And it's sad.
And on the surface, these individuals end up seeming very narcissistic because they are just really, quote unquote, out for themselves. But they're doing it because there's some underlying issue that is causing it. And it's like, well, they don't care about anybody else because, they're in like trauma, they're actively in a trauma-based situation. And so, they're not living, they're just reacting to everything that's going on.
And that's the hard part. That's why a heroin addict will, take the gold teeth out of his grandmother's teeth when she's sleeping, because all they see is, I don't want to be sick, and you've got it, I need it. And they're very abusive. They can be very abusive to other family members just because they need the money. But it's not them. It's not who they really are. But when you actually pop the bubble that's around them and get into where they are inside, they blossom very quickly. Mm-hmm. And victims, all of them are horrible victims victims of horrible abuse. It's incredible. How did I get off on heroin addicts?
I have no idea.
Yeah, but we're there now. One of the other things I find with empaths when I'm talking to somebody, I find that they are, I can look at somebody, and this is what kind of freaks out people when I say, I think you're an empath. And they say, well, what makes you say that? I said, well, do you still wake up between 3 and 4:30 in the morning? Yeah, how do you know that? Did you ever see shadows in your bedroom when you were a kid? Yeah, I still sometimes do see those. I said, yeah, they're just human ghosts. We'll move on.
All right, what's the 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning? Because that has something that I am or it used to be, well, I still am, a very sound sleeper. And I mean, apparently like a transformer, telephone, electric transformer, whatever they are, blew outside of a window of a place I lived. The only thing that woke me up was a box that was sitting over the bed fell on me.
Crap.
I mean, I can sleep through a lot of crap, and yeah. But in the last 3 or 4 years, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, bink. And I'm like,
and also, if it's only been in the last 3 or 4 years, it could be just like, oh, I got to pee.
No, it's not even that.
Okay. But did you ever see shadows in your room when you were a kid?
I lived in a house where the dead guy was in the basement.
He never came up to your bedroom?
No, I had pretty good protection. That was the other part. It's like lived in a house that had the dead guy in the basement, moved to a place that I found out after I moved in was the former funeral parlor. Yay.
The dead center of town? Yeah.
Yeah, it was. No, because I didn't really want to see them because they scared the crap out of me. Even though I do ghost hunting now, and ghosts totally don't scare me. And I had the Tom, the shadow figure that lived in my backyard, and to the point that I would have company, and my company would be like, Rita, there's somebody in the backyard. And I'm like, it's just Tom. Don't worry.
Yeah, just leave him alone. Yeah, 3 to 4 in the morning. If I had that when I was a kid, I had the shadows in my room. The last shadowy figure was a female. It was like a young girl, probably 7 or 8 years old, 10 years old, standing at the foot of my bed, who then came up to the side of the bed, and I reached out to touch her because I thought it was my freaking little sister. And as soon as my hand went into where she would have been, I just fell in a deep sleep. And I remember this very, very clearly. This wasn't a dream because the next day I got up and I told my mother, and my mother was cleaning up after making breakfast. And she said, oh, yeah, sometimes that happens. And that's all she said. And I remember that to this day. Oh, sometimes that happens. And I was dumbfounded, and I walked away from it. But I remember putting my hand out, and I was definitely awake, and that was it. Well, then I think what happened in talking to a couple of psychic friends, was I had told them to leave me alone. And they do. The adult ghosts do anyway, but I have had experiences, and my listener knows a number of experiences I've had with, like, down in haunted rooming house down in Tombstone, Arizona. I got grabbed. My hand got grabbed, and the kid ran under the bed, thumping as he went under my bed. They were little kids. Or in a haunted hotel in Wheeler, Oregon. Between 3 and 4 in the morning, I got up to go pee, came back to bed, fluffed the pillow, turned off the light, and I heard a little girl say, "Daddy." And that would kind of creep me out. But those things happen because they're kids. And even though you've built a little block around you and say, look, I'm not interested, please leave me alone, kids still come through. The dead kids will come through.
I have a rule, you're not allowed in my house. Period.
No, see, and that's a good rule to have. I've got, I had an issue with a tenant here who actually invited somebody in who was standing at her door of her bedroom. She said, "Yeah, you can come in if you want." And the guy came in, and we had to get rid of him, which was a whole, I think, 2 episodes of my podcast, because he would grope her in her sleep, he would snore, he smelled bad. It was just a horrible ghost. And we had to push him out. But once she invited him in, he was hard to get rid of. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but if there's rules. There are rules. And when you say, leave me alone, and I find a lot of the empath, and getting back to empaths, this is one of the things I would say, like between 3 and 4 in the morning, 4:30, I guess it's been explained to me that the veil thins between 3 and 4:30, that space between us and them. So they're easier to contact. So we're walking around with this bright light coming out of the top of our head. Let's call it a bright light as an empath, showing all the other low vibration beings around that we're a higher vibration. Well, dead people are lower vibration. If you haven't crossed over, you're a low vibe, and you feel really good hanging out with somebody who's a higher vibration. So all day long, they're walking along with you, tapping you in the shoulder, saying, "Rita, hey, Rita, hey, Rita," and doesn't phase you at all. And then between 3 and 4:30 in the morning, it's like grabbing your shoulder going, "Rita, wake up." And you wake up and go, "Oh, okay, I got to pee." Or you roll over or whatever.
No, very, very interesting. I'm going to have to get back to you on that one because of my history, I can get into some really funky, weird, negative thinking. You know, like I can go from like happy to over there just because somebody looks at me weird. Okay.
Okay.
And so usually when I get up, it's like I start having negative thinking, which really annoys me. So I put Forensic Files on my phone with a headset, and I put one earbud in because I don't know if you've ever watched that show. I would assume you have. You know, you can watch it, but not really watch it, you know, and you can just have the thing playing. You can keep track of everything that's going on.
Yeah.
You know, and I've literally like gone through that series like 6 times because I'll put it on at night because the guy is very soothing that's talking.
Oh, isn't that voice?
You know, and you don't really have to watch it, you know. So if you're awake enough to pay attention, that's if I can make it past the music sometimes. But I am going to check. To separate out because, again, it's that awareness thing. You know, I'm waking up and now my brain is going, "Rah!" If it's me or if I got some funky funk going on in my room. Never even thought to look. Never thought to look.
Okay. Yeah, get back.
That ought to be interesting.
I'm going to have you back on anyway and talk about some of your other books and your ET stuff and some ghosts and dark angels and things. So, yeah, we'll get back to me on that. One of the other things I find with the higher vibration people, other than, you know, the classic we attract narcissists, the waking up thing, I find that they are in careers such as maids, butlers, bartenders, waiters, waitresses, chefs, artists, teachers, nurses. We gravitate to careers where we help other people do something. Mm-hmm. And one of my friends who's extremely high vibration, who sees freaking ghosts all the time, he's a contractor, and he says, "Well, it couldn't be me." And I'm looking at him going, "Yeah, it is. You're basically an artist. You build things for people to make them happy." And he says, "Well, yeah." I said, "I bet you can you look at a blueprint and actually see, when you look at a blueprint, you see it in 3D, don't you? you actually can picture the building already built in your head. He says, yeah. I said, yeah, that's not everybody who does that. Like, you see things that other people don't. It was funny. He was cutting some tile last summer, had his earplugs in and everything. He shut the tile cutter off, took his earplugs out, and he heard something behind him. He turned around. There's two men standing there, and he stared at him. And one leans over to the other man and says, "He can see us, can't he?" And they both turned around and disappeared. So he was going, "James, I just ran into two old guys at the construction site." Yeah, it's funny. Yeah, he's... we crossed some stuff out of his house, and his neighborhood. Every dead person in his neighborhood showed up at one time when we were remotely crossing people out of Kevin's house. He's a very cool guy, but he is one of those people. He said, "Well, no, I don't really help people." I said, "Yeah,
you do.
You do every day. You're listening to somebody, and you're making their dreams. You're building something for them." And that is the love and he's very compassionate, putting this work into helping other people. And he said, "Oh, okay, that makes sense now." But yeah, I haven't found, we're no good in a cubicle unless we're like working on the computer, building something for someone. But we'd rather be out face to face with people and
I mean, when I had like a real day job, I did drafting, and it was on the board, so everything now is all computer drafting and everything. And when they changed over from actually like having a piece of paper and your pencils and you're out there with your T-square and triangles, man, I like that. And then they changed to computer stuff, and I was just so not interested in doing that. And that's when I changed careers, was because I joke now, it's like, I didn't want to sit in front of a computer 8 hours a day. It's like, oh yeah, you write a book. How many hours do you sit in front of your computer?
Yeah. But you're building. You're building on the computer if you're doing drafting, but you were a pencil swiveler.
But actually doing it on...
know what that means. Like, as you drew a line, you swiveled the pencil as it went.
You rotated it.
It rotated, yeah.
And that's only if you were doing like a lead that went into a lead holder versus doing like a 0.5 pencil, which you dealt with differently.
Yes.
But, when you did computer drafting, it took the artistry out. It took out your line needs to be this long, and now you're putting your cross thing, and, I wanted about 1/8 of an inch, and, there's this whole artistry. And one of the things that I did at a lot of companies was I did exploded view drawing. So, you get something that you have to put together, from Walmart. And it has the picture, and there's like the frame, and there's screws flying around all over with lines going there, and these parts with bubbles, and no one can understand them. That's what I did for a living, except people can understand mine. So I actually got a lot of work doing that kind of work because people could look at them and get it, which is an art in and of itself. But when you do computer stuff, it's kind of like you want a line there. Well, you type in line, 1.5, and it defaults to inches or whatever it is, and it just sticks it there. How freaking boring.
Yeah, and it's not the creative thing that you want to do. It's semi-creative. You're not the artist that's inside of you wanting to build for other people. You're just an arm on the computer.
Plus you had to sit all day, and when you did drafting stuff, you could stand, or sometimes you had to stand because they just gave you this little hard ass stool to perch on. And then I could put my headset on and I could be like dancing and working at the same time. Now that made it good.
Do you in your experience in your research, when you're writing all your myriad of books on various subjects, including the dysfunctional dance of the empath and narcissist, which we've been talking about, have you found that more and more people in the last 15 years are, I hate using this word, but it's about the only one I can use, is awakening or understanding that they are a higher vibration?
I don't know that they've quite got to the higher vibration part. I do believe firmly that there is and more awareness. I mean, it started like in the 60s with the whole, hippie movement, and the 80s was, self-growth, and, and that attracted a big chunk of people where, those individuals, were the teachers, and, now they're, not working. So it's taking it to the next generation. But then you have things like the ghost shows and the ancient aliens and shows that bring up topics that were at one point in time taboo. So I live in Texas, so we're already talking Bible Belt. And then I moved from Dallas to Far East Texas, which is like Podunkville, nowhere, really close to Shreveport, Louisiana, Podunkville. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, what do I say? Because, I mean, I came out of the psychic closet a long time ago. I lived in Seattle. That was very open that way.
Yeah, woo-woo.
So how do I couch it to not freak people out? And have them hate me because I just freaking moved here. And, so I would just say, well, I do alternative health counseling. Well, then people would ask me, it's like, well, have you ever done ghost hunting? Or, I'll make some comment about ghost hunting. It's like, really? Well, tell me about that. And there's an interest because it went from you're doing devil work to being more socially accepted. So now you can talk about it, and there can be dialogues, which takes it to a different level. Same thing with UFO. There's topics that have gotten exposure and took the evilness from it to making it be more common and more everyday. And so being a higher vibrating individual is just not part of that yet.
Yeah.
How's that?
That'll cover a bit of it. There's books out that you have, Stepping Out of Eden, and then there's the Edie Chronicles, what myths and legends tell us about our human origins. Man-Made, the Chronicles of Our Extraterrestrial Gods, Dark Angels. What is Dark Angels? That sounds dark.
An insider's guide to ghosts, spirits, and attached entities.
Oh, attachments. Not a big fan of attachments. The cosmic 2x4.
Avoiding the cosmic 2x4.
Yeah. That sounds.
That's the. Oh, well, if you keep doing this, you're just going to get the big whack up the side of the head.
Yeah, I've been there.
Actually,
I had all my, I'm what's called a evidential medium, which is bizarre. Which is very new to me. But a year or so ago, everything got shut down. I couldn't look at somebody and see things anymore. And then I didn't realize that I was pointed out by a psychic. She says, "Oh, you're in a timeout, dude," because, I would do a reading for somebody, and then I would phone a psychic to ask them how I did. I did fine. So my guides and everybody, I guess they all said, screw it. You have no confidence at all. So we're just going to turn this off. Mm-hmm. So it took about 3 months to get myself in. So that was kind of a semi-cosmic 2x4. I get slapped in the back of the head going, let's get your.
Well, I'm going to toss something out. So I have seen spirit do that. They've done it to me multiple times, but I don't call it that they tune me out. What I have found, and I've seen this in other people, and I'm going to make the assumption this is what happened to you, is that they turn off your primary channel. So if you're a very visual or a very kinesthetic, they just turn it off, or minimize it. But what that does is that it forces you to practice on other channels. So I'm very visual, so it really helped to amplify my kinesthetic ability. And, and then it happens enough time, and it really has helped my audio. Like, I'm not audio or not good audio, but it has helped because I can't see Jack. All right, now I got a client sitting in front of me and I can't see Jack. Yeah. It's like, okay, let's go to plan B. But you sit there and you trust that spirit isn't going to just dump you and will provide you the information, and they still turn out to be good sessions.
Okay. Because I actually stopped the sessions for about 3 months because I wasn't getting the information the way I had previously been getting it.
That's exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah, it makes sense because when I did start it again, I started seeing things differently. So it was like I was forced again, like you said, churning down one channel and making me pick up another channel. And then that changed again last year where I can stand in front of somebody and their mother or dead grandmother comes through on my right, on their left, and starts giving me hand signals for things. Or all of a sudden I get a download. And then in June of last year, I am not only getting the person standing beside them, but this really tall, big, huge protective being about a car length behind them would show up, giving me the stink eye. And it's like, okay, I haven't seen you before. I think because I could see angels on my left, to be their right, and I can see the relative on my right, their left. And then I was seeing this friggin' thing standing behind him and literally giving me stink eye. Like, what are you doing talking to my being here, my human. Yeah, and it's like, oh, okay, this is awkward. But yeah, that was really interesting. So that has kind of developed into this weird connection, and it's but it makes total sense what you said. It wasn't, I got a timeout in the process I was using before,
right?
The channel that I had tuned in, and then over time the other channels developed and everything was, and that which boosted my confidence up again. And then I wasn't having to check with a psychic to find out whether I was right or wrong.
So I just want to make a little piece of commentary, that everybody that does this kind of work receives different kinds of information. They receive information in different ways, so like, I don't talk to dead people. I mean, they show up periodically, but as far as like, nah, I'd rather talk to you about your gallbladder. I'm really good at that, and I'm really good, and it freaks people out, and helping people to identify what the core belief is that's sitting underneath why they're getting sick in the first place, or why they're choosing to stay in a relationship. And it's kind of like, well, when you were 6 years old, some situation happened and it left you feeling like this. And then they start to cry, and and we move on. And so, and I just am putting that out because, there are a lot of people that think, well, because you're a psychic, you automatically talk to dead people. And it's like, I mean, I guess if I wanted to develop that, I could, but I don't.
That's not your path.
Well, I don't want dead people in my house. And I know that they would show up. And it's just like, no, that's okay. I have two. I'm good with them.
Yeah, you're chairman of the board of the International Association of Medical Intuitives.
Yes, sir.
Right? So you guys all get together and point out each other's gallbladders. No, so this isn't we call it woo woo, but it's not overly woo woo. It's not,
no, it's overly woo woo.
Yeah, but it's more mainstream. I was at the Soul Summit in Scottsdale, Arizona, last September. And medical intuitives were there, and it was the first time I actually sat down and could talk to them. And it was a different type of interaction with a medical intuitive than it is strictly with a psychic medium. It's almost as the person talking to them, I was afraid, okay, if I'm going to walk up to you and what if like the person looks at me and goes, oh, your lungs are full of cancer. Something is like, I don't want to talk to you. It's like being afraid to have an interaction with somebody that you perceive can see what's going on inside of your body. Mm-hmm. And I don't
but even with medical intuitives, there's, like my personality is I'm a problem solver. And I am a naturopath, so I understand about working with herbs and supplements. And so when I go into a session, because I get people that it's like, well, you're supposed to tell me. And it's like, well, I could spend the whole hour finding your boo-boos, and then we spend no time with resolution, but I'm really a big problem solver. And so it's like, just tell me, it's like I have cramps in my stomach. I have diarrhea that's been going on for the last 3 weeks. I mean, you can tell me whatever it is, and it doesn't even have to be all that detailed. You just need to point, and kind of tell me, if you go to your medical doctor and you just walk in and go, well, you tell me, there's nothing going to happen, and that's really all I expect is for somebody to say, well, this is what's going on. And it's like, okay, I can go from there. I mean, unless they're really weird, then sometimes I need more information.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. Where does it hurt? Right here. Okay, this is what I see. What if, it's like, I've got a tummy ache, but I'm not going to tell her. I don't think it's your tummy. You have 3 brain tumors. Oh, but I see you also have an ulcer. What? An ulcer? No, we're going to come back and we're going to do a medical intuitive thing, because that is something that I'm fascinated with and know nothing about. So if I know nothing about it, that means I know one of my listeners don't. So I will be asking you a ton of questions about that, because I think it's fascinating that people do that. And one of the psychics I used to have on my show, the live show, was 2 mediums and a large. And one of the mediums, she has now moved on to more of the healing side of things. That modality has pushed it into, no, I just don't talk to Uncle Fred who shows up. I passes a message on, but she is now been guided to be doing more healing, which is an interesting process if you followed her from selling makeup in the local, drugstore, to doing psychic readings, to doing horoscopes, and all of a sudden now she's, over the last 5 years, is into healing as she's grown. I'd love to know how you got into your medical intuitiveness too. It's fascinating.
It was not something I planned. How's that?
It's not something you've planned. It's something that was planned for you.
I just wanted to be Rita the psychic chick, and I would just talk to you about relationship stuff because I think it's juicy and, kind of gossipy. And that was really what I wanted to do. I had no thought, and I didn't want to do the ghost thing. And I had no thought or inclination that I would follow this path. But here I am, and it's what comes through. It's what comes through.
And it's where you're supposed to be at this time.
Yep.
And you're open to that, which is good. And I'm glad you're doing the ghost thing, because I can't stand, that's being negative, but I really don't enjoy listening or talking to people who have a paranormal team and go out and do things that do not bring a psychic with them. It drives me crazy. It's like, why would you walk around a house with a recorder for 4 hours trying to find a room where there's a ghost when the psychic can say, 3rd door on the left? Mm-hmm. It's like, and we will ignore everybody else. And there's an idiot downstairs, so we'll just ignore going downstairs. Hey, here's a question for you. And I'm going to throw this one out because this is one of the things I do. And this is strictly away from what we've been talking about. We're touching on the ghost side of things. As going out with a paranormal group, what is the goal of going to a haunted house or haunted location? What is your goal?
To go have breakfast at Denny's after.
So the whole thing is Grand Slam related. Great.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
I mean, I understand that people have issues going on in their homes, and going and do, it's just a very interesting thing. I like doing psychic stuff, and when I was at the Berkeley Psychic Institute, they had what they call the house healing team, where a group of psychics would go into a home, do an evaluation, and then do a healing on the house. And I thought that was pretty cool and effective. The ghost time, and so that was why I agreed to participate doing the investigations, because Not that I was doing any of the energy work, but I just enjoyed doing the investigating, looking around part. To be honest, part of me doesn't, other than for their own edification, I don't really know what value anyone gets out of having a team come in other than confirmation that there's something going on, because there's not really any resolution.
Yeah, that's what I find. I've been to locations. I was on a couple of teams connected to TAPS, the Atlantic Paranormal Association, or whatever it was. But their rules were silly. You'd go. Well, actually, I don't even know if it's their rules, but it was translated by the guy who was in charge of the paranormal group. We'd go to a location that a citizen would say, I think my house is haunted. And we go there and go, yeah, crap, this is haunted. And what we would do is we were told not to tell the client what we had yet. We get all this, back and forth conversations. We get photographs. We get everything that I don't think Ghost Adventures has even got yet. In 10 years, we would get in like one day photographs of ghosts and things, and full-on back and forth conversations. And what the guy would do is he would then set it up for another group to come in and get the same information, and then another group, and it would just draw this thing on. And we'd have groups coming into these people's houses getting the same stuff, and at the end of the day, we'd show them a bit of it and walk away. Well, are we going to cross over the being that's there, that came forward basically to say, hey, I'm stuck here? No, we don't do that. So,
but my observation is that the amount of active hauntings, man, this is a whole 4-hour conversation. The amount of active hauntings versus the number of residual hauntings is astronomical. I've only been to a couple of places that had really active hauntings going on. A lot of residual energy, but not a whole lot that was all that juicy.
Yeah, we've been to, there's a residential school, which is one of those ones where the government back years ago took the First Nations people to teach them how not to be Indians anymore. Very, very sad. And it's actually run by one of the local bands. We call them bands here, you'd call them tribes. And they have the front office area is their offices, but the back of the building itself is vacant to the most part. And it is crazy haunted in there. And
I believe that.
And it's crazy. And we weren't allowed, I shouldn't say we weren't allowed to. The paranormal group turned it into a frigging, destination haunting thing. So it was crazy. And I have a psychic medium in Maple Valley, Washington, who does remote viewing, and we cross them over. Mm-hmm. And it gets me so angry sometimes when these people, we go into this place, there's a kid upstairs who runs around and cries and all this. And we always go up there and we get all the information. We can hear him on the recordings and all this. Well, tell me that. And the next time you go, he's not going to be there because Skeeter's going to show up and cross him.
And
that's what we do. We just if someone calls me and says, hey, there's a ghost in my house, the first thing I said, if there is a ghost in your house, what would you like me to do with the ghost? Would you like to talk to the ghost and see why it's there? And maybe cross the person over if it wants over, or make some kind of an arrangement so you can share the residence, or you just want us to poke fun at it and leave? Because I won't do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do not.
Because ghosts are people too. They just don't have bodies.
And if they had mental health issues on this side and were a bit of an ass on this side, that's the way they're going to be on that side. Mm-hmm. And, we can move them on. And there's all sorts of other things that could be in there, too. We get all sorts of shadow people and black masses and things. And it's okay, I'm not really happy in this place. There's been too much going on. But, I've had, you're right. This is a 4-hour conversation, which I don't want to get away from our dysfunctional dance.
Our dysfunctional dancing.
Yeah, with the empaths. And again, we are talking to Dr. Rita Louise. Please go to her website, soulhealer.com, and check out her book, The Dysfunctional Dance of the Empath and the Narcissist. And you'll find out exactly a little bit more than what we've touched so briefly on it, and all the literally talking. It gets really in depth into the unconscious patterns that keep some individuals trapped in these abusive cycles in relationships, and points out your energy and how a narcissist and you as a higher vibration person interact, and give you a lot of answers, possibly, if you are that kind of person. If you identify yourself as being an empath, which a lot of people have now, and see exactly where you may fit in, and it could give you a hand. So,
but it also offers, ways to start healing. It gets into concepts such as mindfulness and energy and, working on creating a whole you so that you don't have to keep doing this, so there's the brain food part so that you can understand, what am I doing in this? And this is, when I was working on it, and I talk about the life cycle of the narcissistic relationship. And I have to tell you, there was some spread. I'm like, holy crap, they did that, and they did that, and they did that. And I'm like, and the part that was the most mind-blowing was, and there's vocabulary for it. I mean, that means it's not just like their weird idiosyncratic behavior. Like, it's a pattern. And so, it's kind of like, well, we're going to talk about that, because if it's that consistent, then you can use it to start spotting what's going on, and backing your energy out. But ultimately, it's about finding you and being whole to you and honoring yourself and loving yourself and being good to yourself, so that you don't have to tolerate the toxicness, the abuse anymore.
Dr. Rita Louise, thank you very much for dropping by, and we are going to drag you back kicking and screaming to talk more about your other experiences and your other books.
I don't know, but I have good boundaries now, James.
Hold on, you have good boundaries. I'm going to try to get you back here anyway.
Okay.
I'm going to break one of your boundaries and get you back here.
Okay.
Watching you while you sleep.
All right, that's it. Let's roll. And hey. Let's be careful out there.
Far over the snow, what are those voices? They sing as they go. What are those voices? Look up for the mountains. Somebody better hide on through the hill, like a pack of angry wolves on the trail. Dead or alive, we are out to get you, dead or alive. If you're the one, better run away. Son, you are done, throw your gun away. Here come the Mounties to get the man they're after now. Run through the hill like a pack of angry wolves on the trail. Dead or alive, we are out to get you, dead or alive. If you're the one, better run away. Son, you are done, throw your gun away. Here come the Mounties to get the man they're after. No!